In the state of Louisiana, we got here what's known as the Napoleonic Code, according to which that whatever belongs to the wife belongs to the husband also, and vice versa.
My, but you have an impressive judicial...
You know, if I didn't know you was my wife's sister, I would get ideas about you.
Such as what?
And oh, this place so dumb, you know what.
All right. Cards on the table. I know I fib a good deal. After all, a woman's charm is 50% illusion. But when a thing is important, I tell the truth. And this is the truth. I never cheated my sister, or you, or anyone else on earth as long as I lived.
Where are the papers? In your trunk?
Oh, everything I own is in that trunk.
See? Action!
Watch out. The plaster cracked.
All right, you hands now. Cut out the cackling there.
Oh, you can't hear us.
Well, you can hear me, and I told you to hush up.
Cut it, print it, that's all.
But there are things that happen between a man and a woman in the dark. It sort of make everything else seem unimportant.
We're talking about his desire. Just brutal desire. The name of that rattletrap streetcar that bangs through the quarter, up one old narrow street and down another.
Haven't you ever ridden on that streetcar?
Action!
Hey, stop! Hey, stop!
Let me get by you.
You want to get by me? Go ahead.
You stand over there.
You got plenty of room to get by me now. Think I'm going to interfere with you? You know, maybe you wouldn't be bad to interfere with.
Don't you come toss me another step or I'll...
You what?
Some awful thing will happen. It will.
You're putting on that. Huh?
Got it, Prince.
The first thing you should do with an actor is not sign a contract with him or something like that. Is to take him to dinner and take him for a walk afterwards and speak to him and meet his wife or his girlfriend or whoever he just dropped or whoever he just took on. See his children. Listen to him. Find out about him. See what he is as a human being. That's your material. His experience is your material. Now, that's strictly Stanislavski, group theater, and so forth, but it's also me. I believe in that. And when you know what an actor has, you can reach in and arouse it, right? You got it? But if you don't know what he has, you don't know what the hell goes on. And you say, well, do this, sit here, don't smoke your cigarette there, light it here, look out the window there, and all that. That's all baloney, you know. The important thing is to get him going and seeing what he does and what you do in respect to what he does. Do you follow me?
I did a play called All My Sons, was directed by Kazan, written by Arthur Miller, and the play ran for quite a while. Somewhere in the middle of it, Kazan gave me a play to read. He said, I want you to read this. I went home, and as I read it, I came somewhere in the middle, 3/4 of the play, and I guess I was crying. And my wife, who was ironing, said, what are you crying about? I said, you read it and see how you feel. And I finished. I gave her the script. She read it, and I was doing the ironing. And she started to cry. And I think we both agreed it was the best written play I have ever read in my life. Poetically, the way the words were put together. It was real, and yet it was poetic. Just beautifully done. And it's Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire. And when I saw Kazan, I says, I read the play. I said, it's a good play. He said, you liked it, huh? Yeah, I said, yeah, I liked it. And I said to him, I'd better be in it too. He says, it's okay, it'll be okay. I said, no, okay, I gotta be in this play. And it was. I was in the play, Mitch. And in the theater, this play ran for 2 years.
Well, Tennessee Williams had been around for a long time. It wasn't like he just suddenly appeared on the scene and wrote Streetcar Named Desire and everybody said, hey, this guy's great. He had been a long time as an apprentice and, writing one-act plays and so forth. He even worked at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer at one time in the 40s as a scriptwriter. Didn't do very well. And he'd even been a waiter in the French Quarter in New Orleans. And he had, he'd been around, but he had not been a success in any way, shape, or form until about 1945, I believe it was, with The Glass Menagerie, which did very well. So he wrote Streetcar, and he recalled his times back in New Orleans when he was working there. And he lived on Royal Street, and he lived upstairs, and there were 2 streetcars that went their way along Royal, and one was called Desire, and the other was called Cemeteries. And this somehow struck him as a kind of a keynote, and a rather sardonic one in some ways. And this was put in the back of his mind. A lot of things were always taken out of the back of his mind. And even his relationship at home, with his mother and his aunt, who turned out to be one of the inspirations for Blanche, but it was just the way she talked and the way she phrased things and her background and so forth. And of course himself. There's a great deal of Blanche in Tennessee Williams, believe it or not, and he admits that. So it's a fusion of various things. And of course it developed from some one-act plays that he had done earlier, much earlier.
He had a devoted agent named Audrey Wood, who was his mentor and guide and house mother and den mother and everything else for most of his career. I mean, she's quite a wonderful woman, actually. And she had given it, of all people, Streetcar to Irene Selznick, who was the daughter of Louis B. Mayer and ex-wife of David O. Selznick. And she was very much an amateur when it came to play production. She'd only done one play, which I think at that point had closed out of town. But Audrey saw something in Irene, a sort of ferocity, I think, that would stand the play in good stead. And she was looking for a director, and Kazan was hot. He was just coming off of All My Sons. Arthur Miller played, had been a huge hit, and he'd had other successes too. But he was also, at that point, quite a successful movie director. So he was a logical choice for this thing. And then his wife, Molly Kazan, had been a great supporter of Tennessee Williams from before World War II. So the first person in the Kazan household to read Streetcar was Molly, and she loved it and handed it to her husband. And he had a couple, maybe 24 hours of, I don't know, it's a little off my line, which it was, before he, committed to doing the play. The largest problem with the play was casting. Jessica Tandy, who played Blanche first on Broadway, her husband, Hume Cronin, was a friend of Kazan's, and he arranged a little production out here of an early version of Streetcar. I think it was just a one-act play, but it had a lot of the themes and maybe some of the characters, and invited Kazan to it, and, Kazan saw her and said, okay, that's Blanche.
Marlon called her the mother hen. She made sure that we weren't playing around. She was a professional. She came from London. She knew all about the theater. And we were American actors who were in a hit play and feeling our oats and having a good time. And every once in a while she'd come to me or to Marlon and say, that's enough. Play the play. Never mind. And he'd come up to the dressing room and he'd look at me and says, the mother hen is at it again. See? So she was a mother hen, and thank God for her. This beautiful woman. She was the whip. She held it together.
Hey, Stella!
Stella was also a problem. They didn't have a Stella. And somehow Selznick recalled Kim Hunter from, I think, one of her husband's movies.
Irene Selznick had been aware of me when I was under contract to David, and read in the paper that I was back east doing summer stock. I was playing Claudia. and doing a kind of tour of it. And she said to herself, I'd heard later, oh, she said, the girl's in theater. Or maybe she's really a good actress. Let's find out. And so she sent her assistant to see me and Claudia, except that he thought I was playing in Stamford, Connecticut, and I was playing in Stamford, New York. So by the time he got to me, the performance was over, but I hadn't yet left the theater. So he came in and talked to me, and he said, Irene has sent me here to talk to you about this character, Stella, but I can't show you a script. I can't even ask you to come in and read for it yet because we haven't cast Blanche yet, and we must have the older sister cast before we decide who should be the younger sister. He said, I guess all I can say to you is, before you decide to do anything else, give us a ring. Well, I didn't have to worry about that. Apparently, when I was playing Claudia out in Detroit, I got a wire from them, would I come in and audition for it? And came in and auditioned for it. I read for Kazan and Williams and Irene. And about an hour later, they called and said, okay. And that was my Broadway debut.
The largest issue was, of course, Stanley. It was supposed to have been, oddly enough, John Garfield, but he made a lot of demands. He wouldn't sign a run-of-the-play contract. He wanted to be able to get out to go do movies after 4 or 5 or 6 months. And so that broke down the negotiation with him. And at some point, Kazan remembered Brando.
Kazan saw him in a play called Truckline Cafe. I was in the play also. He was in the third act, and I was in the first and second act, just small parts. I played a drunken sailor, and Marlon played a ex-GI who came home and found out that his wife had been sleeping around with other men while he was fighting. And he comes in, and he takes the wife on a walk to the pier, and then comes back in 15 minutes, and he's all wet. And he starts to discuss a speech that lasted maybe 4 or 5 minutes, what happened. And when it was over and he got up to leave, that audience clapped, stamped their feet, they whistled, they just went hysterical. I never saw anything like that. You couldn't start the play for a minute and a half, and that's a long time when you're on the stage and there's nothing going on, you can't start. Well, Kazan saw that, and he knew he had something inside.
He studied with Stella Adler, and she was a very good teacher. He learned a lot from her. He hung around the actor studio. He was in my class at the actor studio, and I got to know him. And when the time came, and the actors that Irene Selznick would have hoped for, like Garfield and Burt Lancaster, were not available or were not ready, I suggested Marlon.
And he was funny about it. He said it was very difficult to find Brando, physically find him in those days in New York. He had no fixed residence. He'd sleep on people's couches or at some girl's house or whatever.
You never know where the hell he was going to sleep. You don't know whom he was with. You don't know whom he was running away from. You don't know whom he was angry about. You never knew. Every day there was a drama that he brought on the set with him.
But he finally tracked him down, and he said, no, look, you got to go talk to Tennessee. He's got to see you. Williams and his friend were at Cape Cod. So he gave him some money, and Kazan always said that he thought that Brando took the money he gave him for food and thumbed his way to the Cape because he arrived like 2 days late. And the Williams household was in chaos, the electricity was on the fritz, the plumbing wasn't working. And Brando, he comes in and he fixes everything, he fixes the electricity, he fixes the plumbing, and absolutely, of course, charmed Tennessee. So that was the casting.
The thing that also helped a lot in that production was that Tennessee had a crush on Brando. I'm not talking about sex now, I'm talking about person to person. He thought Brando was terrific, and he was very happy, and he supported me in it. But in black moments and dark moments, he'd say, he's great, don't worry about him, he's great.
When we went to the rehearsal, the first thing Kazan said, you've all read the play, and I want you to know there are going to be no changes. This is it. This is the play. So we get to work on it right away, and it's true. There was no big, massive changes. Maybe a word here, a line there, something to get a person in or out. But that was it.
The problem early in rehearsals was Brando just mumbled. I mean, he's one of those actors who early in rehearsals just doesn't take the part. He's just toying with it in his mind, and he's kind of mumble, and nobody could hear him and all that stuff. Everybody was worried about it. But then he started to come up, and then he began to dominate Blanche and throw the balance of the play off in a certain sense. And it very much worried Kazan, and he said, what am I supposed to do? Say to the guy, be less good?
I said to Tennessee, I said, this thing is becoming the Marlon Brando show. I said, everybody who's come to see the rehearsals, say, who is that? And I said, your play's not about Marlon Brando or that character, Stanley. It's about this woman who's somehow a reflection of your own self. I always felt that play had an autobiographical element. I said, it's about you, the play. And he said, that's a lot of bull. He said, baloney. He said, but don't worry about it. He said, Jess will come up. And Jess did come up. And by the time we opened, it was all right. That problem didn't exist.
But it was a challenge because Jessica was trained in the British theater where you are used to the other actor accepting, coming on cue, or maybe waiting a little bit, and you get used to that, and that's the rhythm of the scene. There's no rhythm with Marlon. You had to be right there every minute, and Jessica wasn't used to it. But like a wonderful human being that she is, she put up with it. It was difficult, very difficult for her.
I think Williams had the notion that this was not just a play for that season, that this was a play that was going to go on as it has forever. Like Chekhov. You know, we've never yet seen anybody's definitive production of any of the great Chekhov plays. It's each new generation comes to them and does them in different ways. I mean, and the play is roomy enough for all kinds of interpretations as the years go on. And I think Williams understood that. He said, so, okay, so this will be Marlon's show, but, you know, in another time, another place, it'll be her show. And I think he had that confidence in what he'd done. And finally, you know, Kazan accepted that.
Kazan directs to the human being. He knew it's the actor who makes the scene come alive. It's his job to find out what's the scene about, where are you coming from, what do you want, and how are you going to get it. Those are kind of fundamental things that you can always rely on if you can't find anything else. And as a director, that's what he looks for. He said, what's the scene about? How can I help the scene? If a scene had to be a warm, hot love scene, and yet they couldn't touch each other, he had it done in front of a burning fireplace. The imagination, that's Kazan. He helps in that way. And when you say, well, what did he teach you? The fundamentals, how to work on the part. Kazan always felt that most actors get a part, and they read this, and oh, I'm going to do this here, I'm going to cry, and then the third act, I'll be joyous, it's over, and I'll do this, I'll do that, and I'll do that, all up here on branches. But where's the trunk of the tree holding it up? Where's that trunk that holds it all together? Get that trunk. That's what you have to work for. And they used to call it the spine of the character. That's Kazan's analysis of how to work on a part. You know, I worked with Hitchcock also, and he was so technically pure that if it didn't work, he could do it with the camera. He knew just how to cut it and where to put it, and he did it that way. There was no problem with Hitch. With Kazan, sometimes there would be a problem. If two people are doing a scene and it's just not strong enough, it's there, but it's just a scene, he'll go to one person and say, hey, listen, he thinks he's taking the scene from you, and he's bragging about it and everything. And the other fellow says, be careful, he's mad at you. He thinks, you know, he gives you something that when you play the scene, your mind is already been given that instinct to say, I'm going to watch.
He was an extraordinary director to work with. He would get to know all the actors that he worked with very, very personally, and get to know you much about your life, much about your feelings about things, so that when he wanted any of those internal beauties from you, he knew which button to turn and to push to get it out of you, but would do it very privately, not in front of the whole company. It was always just between you. And he had an incredible capacity to get the very best out of every actor that he ever worked with, I think. I haven't talked to anyone who's ever worked with Kazan that would deny that.
I never did a storyboard in my life. I wouldn't know how to start. It wouldn't mean anything to me. Excuse the stuffiness, but I don't really approve of it, because you can't make a storyboard here until you see what the actor's going to give you. And if you have any respect for your own talent, stirring up an actor, or the actor's talent in responding to your direction, you're not sure of what the hell's going to happen. And a good director's not sure when he gets on the set what he's going to do. Now, I like directors who come on the set and create something that's a little dangerous, difficult, or it's unusual. Where did that come from? I didn't know people. Oh, yes, people do that. Oh, yes, they do that. You know, that kind of thing is what interests me. And that doesn't mean anybody has to agree with me. Of course, nobody probably does. A few people may. But that's the way I feel about it. I feel that the more ambivalent you are and the more uncertain you are in the morning, then you get something that you have not gotten before and that you cannot anticipate and no one else can anticipate.
Charles Feldman, who was a packager, a producer, and an agent, who had produced other things, including the Glass Menagerie, he suddenly bought the rights. And Darryl Zanuck at Fox had known Feldman and had worked with him and so forth. And Feldman went to him, and Darryl Zanuck thought, we're going to do it. Fox is going to do it. We'll get around. Because he was used to he did The Grapes of Wrath and How Green Was My Valley and Gentleman's Agreement, which, you know, these were things that at the time were controversial subjects. And then the president of 20th Century Fox in New York, Spiros Skouras, said, no, I don't want to do that film. We're going to have every censor in the country on us. We're going to have nothing but trouble. And forget it. In fact, if you buy that, I'm going to resign. Now, Zanuck says this in a memo of the time. This is not something that came down and filtered. This was written at that time. So what happened was Jack Warner, Feldman had known him and had done business with him. The Big Sleep was one of those productions, you know, that he had worked on and so forth. And Warner said, okay. And they were going to do it. But unlike whatever was being done then in those studio system days, this was not going to be, okay, now here are the contract directors. Who do you think would be right for this? Here are the contract players. Who do you think? And they brought in people from the outside. Now, this was not common at that time. So you had Kazan, who was not under contract to Warner Brothers. And, you know, it's very interesting, but he didn't want to do the film. He had gone on to other things, of course, after the play had opened. And now we're talking, you know, a couple of years later, he thought, I did that. And they were imploring him. And Tennessee Williams, who had a great regard for Kazan, they'd become very close. He said, you've got to do this. You've got to protect me. And Kazan said he agreed to do it because of Tennessee Williams.
I think Kazan chose to do the film because he felt that he had laid too much emphasis on the character of Stanley in the play. Otherwise, I don't think he would have wanted to direct it because he wasn't one who wanted to repeat anything, ever. We had one hell of a time getting him to come back and give us brush-up rehearsals during the play, I think only twice in the course of 2 years. But he wanted to make it more, the focus more on Blanche.
Kazan, because of the nature of the movie medium, could rebalance the play a little bit, even though he still had Brando in his domineering role, because he had the ability to cut. He had the ability to set up the shots so he could favor or not favor this actor or that actor. So he was much more in control of the movie than he was of the stage play, where, you know, no matter what you got up and running on opening night, it's going to go south as the actors play it. You know, they see they get a laugh here and they go for a bigger laugh there, or whatever, you know, they get more emotion. It's very hard to keep a play under control. The movie's forever, you know. You do it, you shoot it, you cut it, and that's it. It's forever. They always will hit the same mark at the same time in a movie.
So they've decided to do the film. Everybody's on board. Tennessee Williams is going to be involved with Oscar Saul to work on the adaptation. But in the meantime, Kazan is thinking, you know, maybe instead of doing it just as the play, why don't we go back and show Blanche when she's back at Belle Reve and all of these events that are referred to in the play and what happened to her. Maybe we should do that. So he got involved with that, and of course Tennessee Williams and Oscar. So there were people doing adaptations there. But then a couple of months later, apparently, he went back to it and thought, this is wrong. Forget what happened at Belle Reve and what happened here. We'll do it like the play. They did want to open it up a little, which is quite obvious. Instead of having all the action take place at the Kowalski home, which it was in the play. So we got the bowling alley at the beginning. We've got Blanche arriving at the train station. And then we'll have, instead of the scene with Mitch and Blanche in the house, let's have them down at this pavilion by the lake. Well, of course, the lake was on stage 21 because that's the stage at Warner's that you could flood. So they could shoot it there and have light in the distance, but it was the cyclorama in the background.
The problem was Jessica Tandy was not a movie star. They wanted another kind of star. And the star they settled on was Vivien Leigh. And Carl Mullen said to me when I was writing my book about Kazan, he said, look, none of us would have been there if Vivien Leigh had not been there. He said she had the star power that we needed to put this picture over with the studio.
Everybody in the play was in that movie except Jessica. And yet, we never talked about it, but I think she was hurt. Any actor or actress would have been hurt. Vivien Leigh, who had played it in London for about 6 months, was directed by Laurence Olivier, and I imagine their production was a little different than ours, because with Jessica, I used to pick her up like a ballet. Just, how much do you, well, I'll take, and up. And then I bring her down as close as I could. She said, well, we didn't do it that way. I said, how'd you do it? Well, you carry me in as though you're coming through a threshold. I said, well, we didn't have a threshold. And she said, well, we really didn't either, but I said, okay. We all had to discuss our moments with her. Kazan said nothing. Once in a while he would say, Vivien, we're doing the movie now. And she said, well, you know, and then, but many times you had to get your way through. But we were all very polite. We discussed everything as actors and found ways of doing it where both of us were very happy. And that's the way it ended up.
Kazan is also able to bring in people from not just the actors, from the outside. Brings in Richard Day, the art director, Barnum from Goldwyn. Also, Harry Stradling, one of the great cinematographers, is brought in to do the film. And then Vivien Leigh had sent him pictures of her costumes from the London production. And he thought, they're too English. And he went to Jack Warner and he said, I really want to have Lucienne de Ballard, you know, his costume designer who had done the New York play. So he gets his way. Got all these people from the outside. This is totally contrary to the studio system of those days. There's the one guy from the studio, David Weisbart, who's the editor, whom he liked. And he relied on him because he said, you know, at this stage of the game, my one weak area that I feel in film is the editorial process. So David was assigned the editing.
Stella and Blanche are from the same background, the same genteel. But Stella has met the Pollock, you know, this low-class Laurentian stud. And remember that Tennessee Williams was a great fan of D.H. Lawrence, you know, so this is a real kind of, you know, Lady Chatterley's Pollock, I guess is a way to put it. And there's a sort of envy thing going on there, and a sort of a triangle. Because in effect, those two women are in contention for Stanley's soul in some profound way, and for their own purposes.
He challenges not only the woman, he challenges the whole system of politeness and good nature and good ethics and everything else. He challenges this. And he did that. He did that in his life. I wish I weren't like that. Well, Brando is like that. He gets very violent. At the same time, he has this soft, I think the trick, the wonderful thing about him is the ambivalence again between a soft, yearning, girlish side to him and a dissatisfaction that's violent and can be dangerous. I think that the combination of the two clashing are what makes that a wonderful performance.
The Secret of Mitch, I've seen it done by 3 or 4 different people, and Every time I see it done, I see one thing, which is what Mitch is, that they didn't catch on to. He hates his mother. He hates her because he'd like to be like Stanley Kowalski. But society hates people that say, I hate my mother. And he really does. But he'd love to say it to her, but he can't.
I've always depended on the kindness of strangers.
I think at that moment, it's a great comment on life. Here's someone in some way ruined her life, has no place to go. The one place with her sister where she could stay. And now that's taken away from her. Where's she gonna go? That to me is pretty sad.